Hello there, and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. We've spent a couple of weeks talking about eliminating the property tax, eliminating, the sales tax, at least on groceries. And it's time to have a little talk about eliminating the income tax. Now, this is where a lot of people get nervous, and I understand why that is, but nonetheless, there are some very good reasons to consider this. I'll get to those in just a few moments.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Once again, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I've been sharing with you a couple of different articles. Actually, this will be the third of three articles written by Ron Nate, who is president of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Before I share this article on what Idaho could be like without an income tax, I want to encourage you to take Ron seriously when he talks about this. Ron has this unique position of having been a legislator. He knows what it's like to be in the trenches, as a lawmaker and as a policymaker. And he has given some serious thought to this. But there's another reason why I feel like you should take him seriously on this matter. And this is going to come from kind of a different direction. You see this? See these hands? Buy one, get one free. This is how most people tend to approach politics, or at least political opposition. And, look, if you're going to be involved in politics, you're going to have opposition. And a lot of people love this. And when I say this, I mean people who very much, people that I agree with for the most part, people I like, who nonetheless, they just love the fight. They are in it for the fight. It's all about the win. And it's less about, what can we do to help people understand so that they'll, stand on correct principles. Nonetheless, I want to show you this is just a still shot. When Ron was out on the street here a couple of weekends ago, the no ice in Idaho, or ice out of Idaho, whatever it was, the anti-ice protest that was taking place in Boise. If you haven't seen the video of his encounters with these activists, there's a couple of things that you'll take away from it. Number one, there are an awful lot of people out there who are just angry, looking for some place to vent, who really have no idea what they are protesting. Somewhere this is tied to Trump or something, and that's enough to get them started. But really, there's no principle that they can state as to why they're out there protesting. And Ron does such a beautiful job of going up to them, having fun in the face of a lot of hostility. If there's one thing they're not afraid of, it's showing hostility to those who may be ideologically out of step with them. But Ron always shows patience and humor. And I tell you this because I want you to know he's one of the most serious defenders of freedom that I've ever met in my life. But people might mistake the fact that he's diplomatic and still has a sense of humor as somehow, well, that's a sign of weakness. It should all be, bared teeth and grim faces. No, I think what Ron has is the more effective way. And so with that in mind, let's talk about what Idaho would look like without an income tax. Now, for a lot of people, that's, akin to, well, what are you saying? We should just be without government entirely? Because that's kind of the way we're trained to think of it. Well, what is government going to do to survive? As if that is the most important thing. Look, even people who want to do away with the grocery sales tax, who want to do away with property tax, want to do away with income tax, can still agree that there is a place for proper government in protecting our rights. But as Ron explains in this article, income, you earned it, you should keep it. Government already has a lot of things in its favor that allow it to help itself to our hard-earned money. And that's actually a problem. But I like how Ron describes this. So we have options. He says, are you getting the idea that the Idaho Freedom Foundation thinks that government takes in too much in taxes? Well, he says, good. Let's keep going. So by applying our 2026 Freedom and Family Agenda's strong position on tax cuts, Ron says, we proposed eliminating the sales tax on groceries and have offered a plan to eradicate property taxes altogether. Both are practical and possible and can be done simultaneously without shifting the burden onto other taxes or taxpayers. Okay, that's good, right? Well, now comes the income tax. And for this, he boldly offers two paths for income tax cuts, predicated on what the legislature does with property taxes. So, first, if the legislature refuses to eliminate property taxes, then Idaho, he says, should do like Mississippi and eliminate income taxes altogether. Second, if the legislature adopts the plan to eliminate property taxes, Idaho should still continue the process of making the income tax truly flat and maybe move it to a nice round 5% rate. So I don't know about you. That strikes me as quite reasonable. Maybe not as anarchist as some would want it to be, or too anarchist for other people, but that seems like a very reasonable place to go. How does it happen? Okay, Ron explains. First, a little bit of history about income taxes in Idaho. He says for fiscal year 2026, Idaho is expected to collect $2,402,500,000 in income tax from households and about $912,800,000 from corporations. So roughly $3.3 billion, that comprises 55.9% of Idaho state tax collections for government operations. Yeah, he says that's right. Income taxes make up more than half of the state's spending capacity for things like public education, health and welfare, transportation, and general government operations. So I know for some people it's like, well, then we must need it. But anyway, I want you to go to the article, which is at idahofreedom.org. You can take a much closer look at the numbers, look at the graph here on this, the income tax revenue over the years, and you'll see some things, some fluctuations here. The article talks about, before continuing with the tax cutting options, here's a little look at the history of the income tax. Until 2017, Idaho maintained its highest income tax rate at 7.4% on household income and business income for the highest earning brackets. Well, in 2022, the legislature continued rate reductions and collapsed the tax brackets to one flat rate of 6% and then 5.8%. In 2025, House Bill 40 continued rate reductions down to the current 5.3%. So with that in mind, to just kind of give you some background, what you see on that chart is how the massive COVID federal funds affected income tax collections for the years 2021 through 2023, especially when it came to corporations in the healthcare industry. No surprise, right? Well, those years aside, he says, also notice how even though the tax rates were reduced over those 9 years, tax collections still increased from $1.865 billion in 2017 to $3.317 billion in 2025. Do you get that? Cutting taxes doesn't necessarily reduce tax collections. Tax collections increased because of economic growth, some of that growth inspired by the strong incentive of keeping more of your income, that is, of low tax rates. That makes sense. That's human nature. If I'm allowed to keep more of the fruits of what I've earned, absolutely, I will be much more entrepreneurial. So, and up go the tax collections. Nonetheless, moving on. Here are the two paths. Path one, Ron says, we keep the property tax in place, but we eliminate income taxes. So the current income tax rate for both households and businesses is 5.3% of adjusted gross income. In other words, for every 0.1 percentage point of the income tax, the state brings in about $62.55 million in tax collections. Now, just as Mississippi did, Idaho could put a plan together to decrease the income tax incrementally over the next 5 to 10 years till that rate reaches zero. But the beauty of the plan is that the natural course, or the natural growth rather, in sales taxes and other taxes and fees could offset the lower income tax collections. So, of course, the plan requires spending restraint by the legislature. That's a given. And by the governor, just as all tax cutting proposals do. And yeah, it's a long shot, but we're saying there's a chance. Passing a law that cuts the income tax rate by 0.6 percentage points per year for 9 years would make Idaho a zero income tax state by 2035. It's doable if the will is there. So every dollar of income earned by households and businesses would be free of taxation for the income's sake. Sales and commerce would be soaring. Therefore, sales tax collections would undoubtedly be soaring too. The government will not starve. So all in all, he says that is a huge win for Idaho. Now, the second path is, okay, say property taxes are eliminated. Well, for every 0.1 percentage point of the income tax rate, the state brings in about $62.55 million in tax collections. So if property taxes are eliminated, then he says it would make sense to maintain Idaho government obligations with a simple, low income tax rate along with the sales tax still in place. So, an income tax that generates enough collections for the Idaho state government, but also maintains strong incentives for economic growth by households and businesses keeping more of their incomes. I like that. That's a win-win. It's more than just the state. Good, we got what we needed. We'll be back to squeeze you next year. So basically, the plan in this case would be to cut the income tax to the 5.0% flat with a trade-off of at most $187 million or less in collections annually. But the drop would likely be smaller than that amount. Lower tax rates indeed incentivize more income earnings, so tax collections may not suffer at all. And you can look at the chart to see between 2017 to 2025 what he's talking about. And again, one big win is the natural growth in sales taxes and income tax generation, an income generation that could offset the lower income tax rate. But as always, and this is always the spoiler for, I guess, those who well, how can we make it happen? It requires spending restraint by the legislature and by the governor, which is a hard thing, but it's a worthwhile thing and something we need to be working on anyway because it's so long overdue. So there you have it. All three articles, again, are posted at idahofreedom.org. Look at the articles from Ron Nate about getting rid of the grocery sales tax, getting rid of the property tax, getting rid of the income tax. I mean, I don't know about you. I could use enough less government to be able to enjoy keeping a little bit more of that hard-earned cash in my pocket. I don't think I'm alone in this. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well,